Well, I'm happy to be here, and I love that our first presentation was about the specifics of armor and weaponry, because that's just such a great foundation. I'm going to take a little bit of a different angle, which is awesome. If we all said the same thing, that would be silliness. All right, so we're going to be talking about obviously putting on the armor of God, and here's what I want to talk about. So in my life, storytelling is everything. It's what I do for a living. I interview people and meet with them, and then tell their story with words and with pictures in a glossy print format and also online. And I believe storytelling really connects us. I think it's powerful. I think it's memorable. Oftentimes after conference, it's the stories that people told that get remembered more than, say, like maybe a long quote or something. So I really feel like it's super important. So with our magazines, we interview people who share their stories. This is the Bucket List family that some of you may follow, BYU grads, and anyway, they've been a fun family, and we tell the story that way. But I also feel like music is storytelling. So one of my callings through the years has been organist or pianist. I had an amazing woman in my ward growing up who was like the quintessential organist in her 80s, had played her whole life. And she saw me in the audience one day as a teenager, and she was like, "You're going to learn the organ." And I was like, "Ah," but she insisted. And I'm so grateful, because it's given me a way to serve. And it's been actually a really fun calling when I've had it at times. But music's also storytelling. If you think about the piano player or organist in your ward, if they play it loud and strong, like that last verse of How Firm a Foundation, and you just want to you're like, "Whoa, this is amazing." Like that is also storytelling. Or if a song is played fast or slow, it changes everything about it. So I feel like music is also storytelling. And also I feel like clothing. So if you look at this picture, the woman on my right, what do you know about her? I think you can tell she's a pageant winner, right? She's got the sash on. That's a look that we're familiar with. She's telling a story even by not even opening her mouth. She is telling us who she is, what she's involved in, and we know that she's in the middle of her 1-year reign. A lot can be communicated by outward appearances, and I've always just been interested in that. So when I was 15, my family, I'm one of 7 children. My dad was a school teacher, so there wasn't a lot of frills in life. I didn't get on an airplane until after high school. But our big trip that I remember is we went on a 3-week trip around the country. We went to the Smithsonian, and my dad was fascinated with flight. So we went to this Smithsonian museum, and probably a lot of you have been there as well. But the exhibits I cared the most about were like the exhibits of what flight attendants have worn through the years and what the Wright brothers wore, like their outfits for whatever reason. I'm fascinated because of the storytelling, because the colors and the styles and the different things help tell a story. And I think it's really interesting. So through the years, if you think about in your life as well, there's experiences and times when how people are dressed communicates. So I love that we're going to hear from Kevin, and he's a marathoner, which I hope he talks about, because I think anyone who's run a marathon is like the coolest person ever. And that for a couple of years, I was in running shape, and we did this relay. And my team, these are some of my teammates, we named ourselves Bling It On, and we dressed like this. And as we were doing this relay, whenever anyone saw us, or when we saw another member of our team, we could immediately identify because of the way we were dressed. We were communicating through our clothing, which made there were benefits to that. People knew that we were on a team. They knew we were running. They knew, that we were not going to be winning, that's for sure. But that was one way that we united and communicated our purpose. We're BYU fans, and we go to many BYU games, but this is one we went to in Vegas. This is my family. You can see my younger daughter is not super excited about this whole thing. She's hot. Vegas is hot. But when we walked in the stadium, it was very clear what team we were on, or what team we were cheering for. Right. And we stuck to that. It would have been very weird if all of a sudden we'd start cheering for the other team or cheering against BYU. The way we were dressed communicated to ourselves and to everyone around us why we were there. And so when you think about going to a basketball or football or soccer game that you care about, often you go dressed in the jersey, in the look of that particular team. And it's a way of just really staying strong, and also finding other people who think the same way you do. If you've ever been to an away game where it's a small group of people cheering for that away team, but if you see someone else in the armor or the jersey of that team, hey, we're on the same team. We have something in common, and I'm supporting you, you're supporting me, we're all supporting the team. So a lot can be communicated by what we wear outwardly. Something like this. I have a son on a mission right now and I miss him terribly. And so when I saw this picture of him as a little preschooler, my heart goes pitter patter. But obviously, just in a fraction of a second, you look at this picture and you know what's happening. He's graduating from a preschool and the color is red, and a lot is communicated by just that appearance. Hiking Timp is something that I live at the base of Mount Timpanogos, and we hike every year, and different groups of people go with me, sometimes big groups, sometimes small groups. And when the girls come, they come to be prepared for this activity of the day. I had a girl show up in flip-flops one year, and I had to be like, okay, based on what you're wearing on your feet, I don't feel like you're hiking. I don't feel like you're going to come with us today. I feel like that's what you're communicating to us by what you're wearing. And she did not make it. She was there for the breakfast before and the treats after, but we communicate a lot by what we look like. Anyway, I had an event where they wanted us to dress funky formal, and I wore a dress I would never wear anywhere else, but in that particular place, it had a purpose, it had a theme. So what does that have to do with things? Well, this verse in Ephesians, and this essence is throughout the scriptures and general conference talks as well, but putting on the whole armor of God. Putting on, armor, like we learned earlier, is a physical, very strong, very powerful armor that we put on that is visible to ourselves and to people around us, and they can tell what our intentions are and what we're trying to do. We're trying to protect ourselves in dangerous situations. The armor of God is not just outward, though. It's also what words we say, it's the activities we choose to do, it's our purpose and the things we say yes to, the things we say no to, the thoughts we have. All of that is part of the armor of God. So everything we've talked about previously was more visible, but the most powerful armor of God is not as visible, but yet it's still as important. And that's what we're talking about today. So by putting on the armor, just like we talked about putting on jerseys when we go to a game, we're telling ourselves where we stand. So the armor of God is the clothing we wear, right? If we're dressed appropriately. I like to tell my kids, what you wear does tell a story. So instead of talking about all the do's and don'ts and robotics of modesty, what story are you telling with what you're wearing? And is that the story that you want to tell? So when we put on our armor, we're telling ourselves where we stand by how we look, but also by how we're acting, how we're feeling, how we're behaving. And when we put on that armor, we're telling ourselves, this is who I am. I have some standards. I have some things that I want to accomplish and signals that I want to give myself. And also, secondly, it tells others, it tells God and the people around us where we stand. It testifies to them of what we believe. So that metaphorical armor that we put on protects us, and it also helps other people to protect us at times, or to know where we stand. And it's really helpful to be really clear about who we are. So, there's a few scriptural stories that I also love that exhibit the same thing. So we're just finishing up the Old Testament, which has been awesome. And one of the stories that just really stood out to me was Rebecca and Isaac. Really cool, really kind of crazy love story of Isaac's servant going to find a wife for him and coming across Rebecca, who was watering the camels and doing all the right things and showing that she had armor on of God by making choices and being kind and following her customs and dressing as one who would be the right person for Isaac. And of course, it's just this amazing story where the servant's like, okay, you are going to come back, and we invite you to come back and marry Isaac. And she agrees. She says, I will go. And it's a quick turnaround. The family wants to keep her a few more days, and it's like, no, we got to go. So she, just without knowing what's going forward, she puts on that armor of God, which is her belief, which is her testimony, which is her willingness to do what is asked of her and to move forward. And that must have been so frightening to not know what lie ahead of her. And we're all asked to do that. When we get extended a new calling, whether it's a mission call or a calling in a quorum or class or in a ward or stake setting, or if, our family has a situation where we've got to do something hard, we've got to move forward with a change maybe in our family. We're asked to put on that armor of God, that belief, and that faith and move forward. And how we dress and how we feel inside and outside will help us to do that. And another similar story, this is Nephi from the Church's Book of Mormon videos. I was looking at the other pieces of art of Nephi where he's like looking super buff and stuff, which Nephi must love. But I also love this depiction of this young boy who did so much and also said what Rebecca did, which is, I will go. Simple phrase of saying, like, you know what? I'm going to just deck myself out in the armor and faith and righteousness. And I'm going to move forward on a path that I don't know how this is going to go, but I am going to move forward. And I think that their examples, both a young woman and a young man, are just really showing us that sometimes you don't have all the answers, but if you armor up, then you can move forward and go on. So how do we do it? As a journalist, the basics are like who, what, where, when, why, and how. And sometimes that how doesn't always get answered, but it's kind of maybe the most important thing. Like, okay, I believe it, but how do we do it? So just a few thoughts on how to put on armor. So number one is put in the time. It's already been talked about how there's so many distractions in our lives right now. And that is, I think, the greatest challenge. And that's not just for kids or teenagers, that's for all of us. We all have so many things pulling at us, good things, but also like some wasted time things. And it's so easy to just spend time scrolling and, looking at things that don't matter, that actually aren't going to help move us forward, that actually aren't anything to do with armor or strengthening us or anything. So making sure we're putting in time related to the armor. So that's time in the scriptures, time on our knees, time in the temple, time like singing hymns or whatever. Sometimes I think car time is a really underutilized thing. If you're in the car alone, that is the perfect time to pray out loud, keep your eyes open. Also to listen to conference talks or a really good podcast or something. Listen to the Turtle app and just really put in that time so that you are strengthening, you're adding layers to your armor and not just adding silliness and meaninglessness, for hours a day. So committing the time, I think, is really number one. Second is make a choice. It's sometimes we want to just kind of move along in life without being like, this is exactly what I believe. And these are my plans and these are my people and all of that. But it's really important to take a stand for like, yeah, I'm an active church member. I wear my garments if I've gone to the temple, or do those things that are armor related, to just really actively choose that. One of the phrases that I like to say to myself is, my actions are evidence of what I want. And so sometimes I have to look at my actions. Okay. So like let's say that I'm saying I'm going to run a full marathon, but if my actions are, I don't get up and go running, then you can't really say that my actions are evidence of what I want. My actions are actually evidence that I don't want that. So look at your actions. Do they support what you say that you want? And then make those choices, take those actions that will help move you there. Okay. Also, to walk away from situations where your armor isn't welcome. And I'm going to relate this to running again. So, and exercise. So I've been through some health challenges, and I've been like many humans, been in shape, not in shape, gained weight, lost weight, and all of that. But one of the times that I really feel like I was focused on my fitness, the trainer at the gym talked about how our environment trumps willpower. And so he's like, yeah, you can say, yeah, I'm not going to eat sugar. I'm not going to have dairy, whatever you're trying not to do, the ice cream and the cookies, whatever. But if you are surrounded by those things in your house, if that's your environment, that eventually is going to trump your willpower. So you can have all the willpower in the world, but if you're sitting in a pile of cookies, it's going to be hard not to eat them. So to put ourselves in environments where our armor is welcome will make it so much easier. And if we spend too much time, I know there are situations where you're in situations at work or socially where not everyone's wearing armor, and that's life, and that's going to be how it is. Especially as we're gathering Israel, we're going to be in these situations. But just know that the longer that we stay in an environment like that, our willpower goes down. So we do ourselves a huge favor by choosing environments where it will help us. All right. And if it's hard, don't be surprised. Like I've learned this with dealing with some of my kids with anxiety. Like sometimes things will trigger hard feelings or trigger some anxiety. And if we're saying to ourselves, oh yeah, I kind of knew that a new school year feels like this for me. So here it is. I expected that. And now I'll work through it. So putting on the armor of God and keeping it on and making good choices is not going to be the path of least resistance. It's going to be the harder path. So when something's hard, when there's a temptation to do something, and we are going to make mistakes, we need to acknowledge, okay, this was hard. And it's okay that it's hard. I'm going to learn along the way, but just don't be surprised when it's not the easiest thing ever. And the fifth tip is just to ask God for help and be specific. I've found that, in primary and as a kid, it's like, help us have a good day and, kind of some basic things. But I really feel like God is a specific God. And so, sometimes I've even said to him, like, I have a magazine to finish, and I only have one day, but I really need it to count for 3 days. Can you help me? Because I've been working on my calling or being a mom or whatever. Heavenly Father, please maximize my time, magnify my time so that I can get more done than would allow. I mean, that's a really specific example, but in your life, ask God for help. Like, I'm struggling with this temptation. I'm struggling with this situation. Please show me the right way, or help me see the next right step, or something like that, to really be specific. I think God loves those. And also, it's more clear to us when we get an answer, if we've asked something specific. So a couple other phrases that I love from Ephesians where it talks about this is the shield, which was referenced before, but that shield of faith is such a protection. And also feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. I love the word peace. Sometimes the world doesn't feel very peaceful, but the gospel, when it's done right, is just a gospel of peace and love. But anyway, faith and preparation, I feel like those two are just such a great match. And one last little thought on that is those few years ago when I was in shape, I prepared. I followed a half marathon, just half, not as cool as Kevin. I followed a schedule and was prepared for this race. I also had a lot of faith in myself and grit that I could do it. But in the middle of the race, I was struggling. And my friend is the one that jumped here. She came to watch me race at one of the points. She was just going to be there to cheer. And I walked over to her. This is about mile 8. And I'm like, I don't think I can do this. And she came in the race with me and ended up running the rest of the race with me. And the whole time she was just saying things to me like, you've prepared for this. You can do this. You know you can do this. Basically reminding me that I had put on the armor. I was prepared. I could have the faith. I just needed that help. And so I want to encourage all of us to, first of all, seek those kinds of friends, but maybe even more importantly, be that kind of friend who helps the people around you put on their armor, keep their armor on, and remind them that they have that armor, that they're protected, and that's the wisest thing to do in these times, in these crazy times that we live. So I just want to close with my testimony that God is such a loving God, and one of his gifts to us is him telling us to put on the armor, to put on his armor, to protect us, to keep us safer, to keep us happier. Like, this is a gift to us that he's giving us this military spiritual advice to put on his whole armor. And I testify that when we do this, and when we follow this instruction, put on these specific pieces of armor, that we'll be blessed, we'll be happier, and we'll be able to also bless and help those around us as well. And I say this in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.